Now let's move into our first conversation. A contactless payment can be made with debit, credit card, stickers, fobs, wearable devices, tokens, and mobile electronic devices that use the NFC as well as radio frequency or even QR codes. Contactless transactions are powered by either radio frequency identification or near-field communication technology, that's NFC, which I mentioned earlier when making a purchase. And these radio waves share your bank account, contactless card, or phone app details with a merchant's payments reader. The transactions are always encrypted. But to tell us more regarding contactless payments and the role of Mastercard is Kari Tukur, who is the Vice President and Head Customer Solutions East and West Africa of Mastercard. She joins me virtually from Lagos. Hello, Kari, and welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's get started. I will start by asking you about the level of acceptance of contactless payments in Nigeria. How has it really changed over time?
Thank you so much, Nancy. The Nigerian financial and payment ecosystem has undergone significant growth and change driven by innovative use of emerging technology and also the actions of our regulators who are really actively driving financial inclusion. Nigeria is a very young and diverse, dynamic country, and it has a very vibrant entrepreneurial culture. We are the largest economy in Africa. We have a high mobile phone and internet penetration. We have a very young youth demographic that constitutes over 70% of the population, which makes a very ripe for digital adoption necessary to drive financial services distribution. We also have a very supportive regulator with a very encouraging regulatory landscape that encourages innovation and inclusion in the financial sector. And some policies that really supported the growth of contactless and, in fact, digital penetration include the recent guidelines for contactless payment that was issued by the central bank, the regulatory framework for open banking, the licensing of PSPs and a lot of fintechs in the market, and even setting up of agencies like SANEP have aided in driving financial services distribution. If we look at instant payments by NIPS, for example, it records one of the world's largest volumes when it comes to real-time payments. But despite the growth in mobile and digital technology, millions of Nigerians still lack access to basic financial services. And we saw a lot of vulnerabilities during the height of COVID. And even more recently in February, when the central bank demonetized the currency. And what we saw then was that a lot of consumers and MSMEs were unable to make and receive payments in the absence of cash. So whilst we've seen a rise in the number of fintechs and digital services providers, the ecosystem remains extremely complex to navigate because there's still a lot of silos within the network, and we're not fully leveraging each other's capabilities to improve that digital ecosystem. Now, we've seen a lot of uptake and interest in terms of fintech and in terms of contactless and what contactless can do. We've seen it deployed in BRT buses, for example, with the likes of Touch and Pay. And recently, Mastercard launched our tap on phone, which is really a solution that helps to democratize the mobile phone by converting it to a contactless device. And we rolled out with a couple of banks in Nigeria. And in the first quarter, Nancy, we saw huge uptake, over 500,000 subscriptions downward, which really says to us that there is a need within the micro and small merchant space for a low-cost digital acceptance solution, which is the power that contactless payments bring. I believe that what will take us to the next level, though, is how we collaborate with each other within the ecosystem and leverage the power of these emerging technologies so that we can create a more inclusive, efficient, and resilient financial solution that can transform the lives of millions of Nigerians out there.
Okay, Kari, I heard you say earlier that, of course, and I do know that you launched the Tap and Go initiative with FCMB some time ago, sometime this year. I would like you to speak more about the steps and the actions, really, that Mastercard has taken to guarantee that a lot more Nigerians are financially included, and especially Nigerians living in the rural and semi-rural areas. That's one. The second part of the question is also, did we come to the party late? as it were, because in terms of contactless payments, and not many of us have even, adopted that. So what is Mastercard doing in that regard? Because you may also be speaking to the elites with your partners, as it were. I wonder what the rural woman, a woman in a rural area, is. She's not even yet used to even mobile phone star 555 or whatever it is on there. You're telling me to come and do tap and go or touch free, and she doesn't even understand that. So are we also coming to the party late, considering that countries like Morocco, South Africa, that's even within Africa, or even countries like China, Japan, the US, have really adopted this? So speak to me about those initiatives and how Mastercard is contributing to the adoption of contactless payments.
No, I think it's a great question. So for me, the adoption of contactless payments in Nigeria has evolved rapidly in the last few years and is driven by the demand for fast, convenient, and secure payments. And we saw this happen in February, like I said, when demonetization happened and a lot of people were cash strapped. The way we define contactless is in two parts, right? First of all, it is a payment that is made without any physical contact between the payer and the recipients, using technologies such as near field communication, NFC, or QR code or biometric, enabled through various form factors like your card, your mobile devices, your wearables, and even a simple sticker, right? As an immediate solution to some of the payment challenges faced by SMEs in light of COVID and in light of demonetization, like I said, Mastercard launched Tap on Phone, which is a contactless payment system that enables customers or merchants to take their simple Android phone, download a simple software or a soft pause, as some might like to call it, and it converts that mobile phone into a device where a customer can tap. Now, there are several steps that we've seen happen in Nigeria. The first is that a few years ago, a lot of banks actually ensured that their debit cards actually had that NFC reader functionality, which means that most of the cards that you now hold in your wallets today enable you to actually tap. So that was one of the things that we first did to ensure that there was conformity and uniformity in terms of the type of plastic that consumers were holding in their hands. The second thing that we then did was obviously launch the Tap on Phone, which really helps us to bring in that low cost means of getting a contactless acceptance growth in Nigeria. And we've, like I said, we've seen a lot of uptake with the likes of FCMB jumping on the bandwagon. Now, we recognize that there are some mobile phones that don't have the NFC reader and therefore cannot be converted to a contactless acceptance device. And that's where QR comes in, which is the quick response. And what we've done with QR is to embed a simple payment link that allows any phone camera to be able to scan that QR, generate a payment link, and you're able to put your card details and make a payment. Now, when you say we might be late in the game, I believe that there's a lot of progress that has been made in Nigeria to lay the foundation and the landscape for the adoption of contactless. Like I said, in Lagos, for example, the Blue Rail Line and the Lagos BRT buses now accept contactless payment with touch and pay, where issuers now use their Kari card to make a payment. So we're starting to build that familiarity. One of the areas that our banks also said to us was, look, we need to be able to protect the ecosystem and make sure that, people are not just tapping away huge sums of money without authorization. So in June 2023, the central bank rolled out the guidelines for contactless payments in Nigeria, and that set the standards and requirements for how the industry and the ecosystem was going to be governed, right? And we've seen that really help define the landscape. But what we've now done is also beyond the limits, the type of phone and the technology, is to say, what about those in the rural areas who are limited by not only the NFC capabilities within the phone or the distribution of smartphones, but even internet connectivity and penetration? How do we solve for that? And that's where our community pass solution comes into place, which is a shared digital platform that connects people in remote communities to essential services. And the beautiful thing about this solution is that it is authorizes transactions online and offline. So where there's internet connection, it authorizes online, and where there's no internet connection, it authorizes offline. And it utilizes biometric data, which also addresses, the literacy levels. So you use your fingerprint or your facial recognition, or it uses a QR code that can be accessed whether you print it out on your mobile phone. So these are some of the things that we've actually done to ensure that we are touching all the different types of consumers, whether it be that they're in the rural, urban areas, or whether they have a feature phone or a smartphone.
Kari, let's talk about the security features and protocols that perhaps Mastercard has put in place to safeguard contactless payments users in Nigeria. Because when it comes to, I remember when, you know, talking about digital payments came in just a few years ago. And I'm really happy that I've also seen the country grow through this period, because even at that time, for many people did not want to use ATMs and even want to have debit cards at all. And now we're talking about contactless payments. And I do believe that we will also, is a transition, you know, and a lot of people at that time were talking about fraud, security concerns, and safety. So what is Mastercard doing to be able to safeguard you know, the safety of contactless payments users in Nigeria? Talk me through how it works.
I mean, Mastercard takes security very seriously, and we have implemented various features and measures to protect the Nigerian consumer and businesses when using contactless payments. The first thing is obviously working with the regulators in defining what the contactless limits are, and we try to apply global standards in that rationale. In Nigeria, a contactless transaction is pegged at 15,000 naira per transaction and a 50,000 cumulative daily transaction limit. These are limits that you can initiate, transactions that you can initiate without a PIN. Any transaction limits above that will require you to authenticate via a PIN or biometric authentication, which is a method that verifies the identity of the user and authorizes the payment transactions before you can actually send the payment. And our contactless payment infrastructure supports both PIN and biometric authentication, which allows users to confirm their identity at that point of payment. So that's the first thing that we've done. The second thing that we've done is that we've said, look, we can actually now enable customers to further digitize their physical card into their mobile phones, where for consumers that have a smartphone. And why this is important is that you're creating a digital version of your card in your mobile phone, and we're now tokenizing or creating tokens of that digital version, which really masks the payment credential, so your card number, your expiry date, and replaces it with a unique identifier called a token, which is then transmitted during the payment process. Now, the beautiful thing about tokenization and using a mobile-enabled contactless payment is that you also get the added benefits of your mobile phone authorization authentication capability, which is whether it be fingerprint to authorize the payment or your biometric. We also enable device-specific verification, which means that only the authorized device can actually initiate and complete a payment transaction. And we believe that with the proliferation of mobile phones in Nigeria and just the growth in penetration of the internet accessibility, we believe that more mobile-enabled payments, digital payments, will drive digital adoption. And having a digital wallet for contactless payments, we think will be the next click for us in Nigeria. Beyond, the form factors for payments, we also have a very robust fraud and monitoring prevention system that uses advanced data analytics and AI to protect and prevent fraudulent and suspicious transactions. The fraud monitoring and prevention system analyzes various factors, such as the location, the device, the behavior, and the pattern of the user and the merchant, to identify and block any anomalies and deviations from the normal transaction flow. And the system also alerts and notifies the user and the issuer of any potential fraud attempt, and provides tools and resources to resolve any sort of issues and conflict. So these are some of the security features and measures that Mastercard has put in place to protect the consumers and the businesses using contactless. And we're constantly enhancing our security capabilities because, as you know, the more advanced and sophisticated the digital payment ecosystem becomes, the more advanced and sophisticated the bad actors are. So we need to make sure that we stay on our toes and we stay 1 mile ahead of them to ensure that we have a very safe and secure payment ecosystem.
Kari, what if my contactless card is stolen or I lose it? What happens? Because,
The first,
yes, because someone that has access to it can actually touch and go too.
The first thing is what is encouraged is that you ensure that you report as soon as your card is compromised or your contactless card is stolen, you report it directly to your issuer. But the beautiful thing also is that the transaction limits are very well defined. Like I said, CBN has put in the mandate that
Guidelines.
15,000 is the maximum limit that can be used for a contactless transaction.
But a daily cumulative limit of 50K with, without a PIN or BVN verification. Now,
Right.
yes, but now let's talk about that. Is that in a way inhibiting the growth of contactless payments? Or, you know, this regulator is also still being a bit cautious in terms of also aiding the acceptance? Because I know that that regulation was brought out this year by the central bank, I think precisely in June, if I can remember, June 27th of this year, precisely when they came up with that regulation for you guys. So do you think that it is in a way, you know, promoting the acceptance, as in, let's edge the losses in case something happens?
I think the simple answer to that question is the rise of digital wallets, right? Because the limits only apply to the physical card in the event of being lost and stolen, in the event of it being compromised, and ensuring that you're able to quickly report your lost and stolen cards to your issuer. But if that card is digitized in a mobile wallet that provides its own authentication and security standards, then those limits don't apply. Because before you can actually make a digital wallet enable contactless transaction, you would have had to authorize the transaction using your biometric authentication. We're starting to see a lot of banks now implement the tokenization capability because we see that digital wallets would actually play a crucial role in the penetration of contactless payments in Nigeria. Why this is because those limits are not applied when you actually initiate a transaction from your mobile phone. Why? Because you authorize those transactions using your biometric authentication, whether it be your facial recognition or your fingerprint or even your PIN, right? So these transactions are authorized before they go through. And what we've set in partnership with the regulator is a limit that is common practice. Globally, there is a limit that applies to contactless transactions, especially card-enabled contactless transaction, to make sure that the exposures are limited.
All right, as we end this, you've been talking about the regulator and the regulations. How has, for example, SANEF, which is the shared agent network expansion, our facility also helped, you know, because these are some of the initiatives that the regulator, which is the central bank, has come up with. And are there other things that perhaps that Mastercard is expecting from the regulator to put in place to enable the acceptance as well as the growth of the sector, bearing in mind, not even of the space really, bearing in mind that you have so many fintechs also operating right now, perhaps over 200 of them, and competitors, all of you are just really going head to head. So what more do you expect from the Central Bank of Nigeria in terms of regulation? Then number two, what more can Nigerians also expect from Mastercard, even as we enter a new year, 2024 year? So what should we expect? Are there any goodies apart from this tap and go? Soft POS, isn't it? That's what you call it. Is it soft?
POS.
Yes, soft POS. Okay, soft POS.
Yeah. No, I think it's what the regulator has done so far has really helped drive the distribution of financial services in Nigeria with setting up of agencies like SANEF, because we need to reach millions and millions in Nigeria, and the branch network, bank branch network distribution is just not enough to enable that to happen. So with SANEF, we now have a larger footprint, and a lot of banks are also implementing their own agency network. We have a larger footprint where we can now distribute our capabilities. We have more agents that can now download the tap on phone and provide contactless payment capabilities to their consumers. I believe that the regulator, in collaboration with different parties within the ecosystem, because it's not just them, we've got to have the telcos, the fintech, the financial institutions, the retail players come on the table to distribute, some of these solutions. And we're working very closely across segments. Beyond just a tap on phone, like I said, we've implemented QR in the market for those who do not have the NFC-enabled devices. We're looking at implementing a localized card product that allows for cheaper, affordable issuing cards in the market. And we call that the Niger card, which is very, very good because that's something that we've not rolled out before anywhere. So we're having a localized card in the market that helps banks really get to the bottom of the pyramid and really meet the demands of the consumers out in the rural areas who really need cheaper financing. We work with governments around training, around capacity building. We just rolled out a SME solution with Providence Bank a week ago, where we've embedded a QR on a physical plastic, which now doubles up as both a payment and an acceptance solution, which is some innovation that has come into our market. So there's a lot of things that we are doing, and we're just making sure that collaboration is key, and partnering with all the key players within the ecosystem to build that resilience structure is what Mastercard is really after.
Okay. Kari, I had said that perhaps that is actually the last question, but let me now ask a final one before you go. For those that are watching us right now and they're saying, okay, I'm really interested in what Kari is talking about and Mastercard is doing, how should they go about it?
The first point of call is to go to any of your local banks in Nigeria and have a conversation about number one, whether your card is contactless. If it is not contactless, request from your bank to give you a contactless card. And the second thing you want to ask them is, when are they going to make digital wallets available? We see a lot of transactions in Nigeria happening via the mobile phone. NIP, like I said, is reporting one of the world's largest volumes in terms of real-time payments. So Nigerians are doing a lot of transactions from their mobile phones. And we've said the security feature on the mobile phone is a great enabler for contactless payments. So we want to encourage a lot more issuing banks and Nigerians to leverage the digital wallets for contactless payments. So go to your banks and let's get them to make these capabilities available to you. We work very well with all the banks in deploying these innovative assets.
Okay. All right. I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Kari, for speaking with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.